In the 7th year of serving a prison sentence for Ethan Foster, I was released early for good behavior. When I walked out of prison, Ethan held up a priceless pink diamond and proposed to me. Everyone praised him for never abandoning me. It was not until the night before the wedding that I learned his real wedding gift to me was putting my virginity up for auction. The starting bid was $1. Ethan's friends burst into laughter. "Ethan, your bride just got out of prison, and she's carrying all that bad luck with her, so I bet she won't even sell for $1. "Exactly, you get to enjoy your wedding night with your lover Chloe while leaving trash like this for us." He sat in the shadows, his expression indifferent. "If she doesn't sell, then make her free, because if Grandpa hadn't said I could only get the company shares by marrying her, I'd think she was too filthy to even look at." I heard Chloe argued with Ethan for days over Evelyn and wouldn't even let Ethan into her bed, and if he hadn't come up with the idea of auctioning off the wedding night, Chloe would probably still be mad. She upset Chloe the moment she got out, so she really does deserve a lesson. Ethan gave a disdainful sneer. "What kind of lesson is this? Evelyn spent 7 years in prison, 7 full years without touching a man, so she must be dying of loneliness by now. And she has always had strong needs, since she used to tempt me so badly that I wouldn't leave the bedroom for days." Ethan kept looking down and scrolling through his phone, then suddenly curled his lips and said, "Found it." After saying that, he lifted his phone. "There's video proof. This is a video from before Evelyn went to prison, and back then we were together every day, but she still wouldn't let me rest. Now that she's been lonely for 7 years, I'm sure she's even wilder." Broken, breathy moans came from the phone, making everyone present flush. Then his friends whistled like hooligans, and their laughter and shrieks rose wave after wave. Ethan's expression stayed calm, as if the person at the center of the topic had nothing to do with him. Amid the overwhelming mockery, tears rolled down my face, and my whole body trembled uncontrollably. Ethan was not like this before. I was a child sponsored by the Foster family, and I had followed Ethan around since I was little. In name, I was his playmate, but in reality, I was a bodyguard trained specifically to protect him. When I was 18, he took my body while drunk. From then on, I had another identity, Ethan Foster's bed partner. I knew I could never climb into the Foster family's world, so I never dared to have any other thoughts. But Ethan refused to accept that. When he was young, his love was passionate and sincere, and he swore again and again that he would marry me and give me a home. During those years, everyone in the city knew it. The eldest son of the Foster family, Ethan Foster, had a girl he loved down to his bones. Until Ethan was kidnapped. I broke into an abandoned factory alone to save him. Everything had been going smoothly, but just before we left, one of the kidnappers touched my calf. That one touch made Ethan's expression change on the spot. He chopped off the kidnapper's right hand, then stabbed a knife into his heart. Even though the Foster family was powerful and influential, killing someone still meant paying with a life. Ethan was the only son, the lifeblood of the Foster family. Because of that, Grandpa Foster came to me and asked me to take the blame and go to prison for Ethan. In return, once I finished my sentence and was released, the Foster family would acknowledge me as their daughter-in-law. Grandpa Foster had shown me kindness, and Ethan was the man I loved. After sitting in silence for an entire night, I signed the confession. Before I went to prison, Ethan knelt in front of me and cried bitterly. "Evelyn, when you get out, I will make it up to you with the grandest wedding." His vow still rang in my ears, but the man before me was no longer the man from back then. No wonder he often hid from me to make phone calls, and each call lasted all night. No wonder he insisted on sleeping in separate rooms from me, and he would not even eat at the same table with me. No wonder whenever he accidentally touched me, he sprang away as if he had been burned. How ridiculous that I only thought he was having trouble adjusting, so I lay in bed waiting for him in the lingerie he had once loved most. That day, Ethan flew into a rage, dragged me into the bathroom, and threw a steel wool scrubber at me. "You just got out of prison, so it's impossible for you not to be dirty, and we'll talk after you wash yourself clean." After my whole body was scrubbed until the skin peeled, I curled up in the corner while tears slid down together with blood. Just as my heart was about to die, he carried me back to the bedroom and promised to give me a wedding night I would never forget. Naively, I thought he had finally changed his mind. It turned out he had only thought of an even more humiliating way to shame me. 7 years was too long. So long that the man I loved had become completely unrecognizable. Since that was the case, I would let go. Holding back the sharp pain in my heart, I called Grandpa Foster and spoke numbly. "My wedding night has been put up for auction, Grandpa, and Ethan doesn't love me anymore, so please let me leave." It was nearly dawn when Ethan came home. For once, he entered my bedroom and called my name in a hoarse voice. I had already gone to sleep, and his voice startled me awake, leaving me full of annoyance, but the moment I met his eyes, that anger somehow faded. Ethan and I had once had feelings for each other. When our love had been at its strongest, he had always looked at me with those eyes and said I was the most beautiful girl in the world, the one who moved his heart the most. As if possessed, I reached out and touched his brows and eyes. But when I remembered the filthy things he and his friends had said, my hand stopped halfway, then snapped back. It's late, so hurry up and rest. When he heard me say that, he frowned, but he still coaxed me patiently. Evelyn, I was wrong these past few days, and I didn't take good care of you. I didn't even notice your lips were cracked, so I made you honey water specially. Come on, try some. Sensing something strange about him, I resisted. But as soon as I turned over and got out of bed to run, the man grabbed my calf and dragged me back. I made it with my own hands, so drink it before you leave. He pinched my chin, forced my mouth open, and poured all the honey water into my mouth. Cough, cough. I choked until my face turned red and coughed violently. When I looked up again, Ethan had doubled in my vision, and my head had become heavy and dizzy. He had drugged the water. When I regained consciousness, I was tied to a European-style high-back chair with only a layer of thin gauze draped over me. Several unsightly tags were wrapped around my ankles. Murderer, new foster bride, cheap goods. Ethan's assistant had even thoughtfully noted my measurements, accurate to 2 decimal places. The seats below the stage were filled with people, and their gazes fell over me without restraint, as if they wished they could devour me clean with their eyes. Mr. Foster really is thoughtful, since he was worried no one would dare take a murderer like this, so he even let us inspect the merchandise first. Evelyn may be a little older, but her body is seriously amazing, with that tiny waist and those long legs, and I can barely hold myself back now. Although the starting bid is only $1, there are so many rich men and big shots here tonight that who knows how much it'll cost to take her away, so I might as well feast my eyes first. Those filthy words were like countless sharp knives, stabbing straight into me and slicing away my dignity inch by inch. In the shadows at one corner of the auction hall, Ethan and a girl leaned together intimately. That must have been Chloe, the woman his friends had mentioned. I could not lift my eyelids, so I could only narrow my eyes and look over. The girl had long hair and wore a white dress, and from a distance, she looked somewhat like me when I was young. I did not know what she said, but it made the man beside her darken his gaze, his face full of desire. He picked the girl up in his arms and walked straight into the lounge backstage. After he had only taken a few steps, one of his friends asked, "Ethan, your wife is still here, so where are you going?" Without looking back, Ethan threw out one sentence. "Chloe is hungry, so I'm going to feed her." Then he paused and ordered coldly, "Evelyn took the drug, so she won't know what happens tonight, and after the inspection is over, just find someone to throw her back home. But none of you are allowed to disturb my fun." Tears slid silently from the corners of my eyes. My heart kept falling until it fell into a bottomless abyss and made no more sound. Ethan thought that under the effect of the drug, I would not remember anything. But he did not know that so I could better protect Ethan, Grandpa Foster had long ago trained me to resist ether-type drugs. The lounge door closed with a bang. Without Ethan present, the words of the men below the stage became even more explicit. Someone even slowly approached me, the desire in his eyes completely undisguised. The gauze was torn away, and several greasy hands roamed freely over my body at the same time. Just when I was drowning in despair, someone glanced at the lounge door, perhaps thinking of how Ethan had once protected me. They did not dare to truly do anything. The bitterness in my heart spread little by little. Ethan, who had once been jealous if someone so much as looked at me, now placed me in such a humiliating place and let others bully me. My mind grew hazy, and I did not know when I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in my own bedroom with my pajamas intact. If not for the faint red marks still left on my wrists, I probably would have thought everything from last night was an absurd nightmare. Before I could gather myself, the bedroom door opened, and more than a dozen people rushed in at once. They hurriedly dragged me up. They did my makeup while changing me into a wedding dress. Only then did I realize in a daze that the day of my wedding to Ethan had arrived. After I changed into the wedding dress, I discovered that it was not the one I had originally chosen. The neckline of the dress I was wearing was extremely low, and without lowering my head, half of my pale chest could be seen. I was ashamed and angry, and my hands instinctively covered my chest tightly. But the woman in charge was not satisfied and forcefully pulled my hands away. Miss Harper spent a few years in prison, and now she really has no manners at all. Because what bride acts so timid at her own wedding and doesn't even fear embarrassing the Foster family? "This is the wedding dress Mr. Foster personally chose for you, and he said it suits a woman like you best." I gritted my teeth as tears swirled in my eyes. Life in prison had been extremely hard, but every time I thought that after I got out, I could become Ethan's wife openly and properly, I found the strength to keep going. It turned out the love of our youth had trapped only me from beginning to end. In a daze, I was dragged and shoved all the way to the wedding venue. The guests were all prominent New York families, and they were dressed appropriately. Only I wore a wedding dress that barely covered my private parts, like a ridiculous clown, unsure of what to do under everyone's gaze. As soon as he saw me, Ethan brought the girl from last night forward. "This is Chloe, the neighbor girl I grew up with, and she's here today to be your bridesmaid." Now even his lies were this careless and perfunctory. We had grown up together, so how could I not know whether he had some neighbor girl? What was more, the train of Chloe's bridesmaid dress was a full 10 feet long and covered in rhinestones. On her ring finger was a 14-carat Oppenheimer pink diamond. I remembered it because it was the pink diamond Ethan had used to propose to me on the day I was released from prison. Only back then, he had said the pink diamond ring was expensive, so he would personally put it on me on our wedding day. No bridesmaid in the world was more glamorous than the bride. Unless she was not a bridesmaid, but the woman the groom truly wanted to marry. I did not expose him and simply looked at Ethan's features from across the space between us. The man who had sworn again and again that he would marry no one but me had died long ago. Inside this body now was a completely unfamiliar soul. Perhaps I stayed silent for too long, because Chloe stepped forward and warmly linked her arm with mine. Your figure is seriously amazing, and this wedding dress is such a good choice today, because it shows off your whole body so well that even a girl like me is about to get a nosebleed. The next second, a burst of laughter suddenly rang through the banquet hall. The Foster family's new daughter-in-law really is shameless enough, dressing like that after being in prison, and I have no idea how Mr. Foster could have fallen for her. She came up to a perfectly good wedding dress like this, like some cheap hooker, and she really can't be brought into high society. Mockery louder than the last was like a sharp blade, stabbing straight into my heart, and making me hurt so badly that I could barely breathe. My face darkened, and I shoved Chloe away. Since you like it so much, you can wear it instead. Ethan protected Chloe in his arms and frowned, clearly a little displeased. What do you mean by that? Chloe was complimenting your figure, so why are you being so passive-aggressive here? You've been in prison so long that you're out of touch with society, and you can't even tell good words from bad. Prison, prison, prison again. Ethan had probably long forgotten that if it were not for me, those two words should have been nailed to him instead. Seeing that my face was still cold, Chloe raised a wineglass to me. What I said just now was wrong. Come on, I'll toast you, and consider it my apology. Staring at the slightly cloudy liquid in the glass, alarm bells went off in my heart. When I looked up again, I realized everyone present had their eyes locked tightly on me. Thinking of last night's cup of honey water, I understood at once. Yesterday was the inspection, and today was the official auction. What? Are you not going to give me this little bit of respect? Chloe urged sweetly, with a hint of grievance in her tone. Drink this wine yourself, I said coldly, because I don't dare drink anything you offer. Chloe's face instantly became very ugly, and she turned to look at Ethan with tears filling her eyes. Ethan, Evelyn, she. Ethan frowned and stepped forward. Evelyn Harper, don't go too far. Chloe only wants to make peace with you, so why do you have to be so aggressive? I looked directly into his eyes and asked each word slowly. What exactly are you trying to do? Guilt flashed through the man's eyes, then he took the wineglass from Chloe's hand and approached me step by step. I kept backing away until my back pressed against the cold wall, and there was nowhere left to retreat. Ethan Foster, do you want to force it into my mouth again like you did last night? As soon as I finished speaking, he pinched my chin again. The wineglass in his hand was lifted high, the wine sloshed, and the next second, it all poured into my mouth. The cold wine flowed down the corners of my mouth, soaked the front of my wedding dress, then ran into my neck. Soon, under the effect of the drug, my consciousness became blurry again. Everything before my eyes grew shadowy, and Ethan and Chloe's figures twisted in my blurred vision. I wanted to resist and I wanted to call for help, but my body would not obey me, and my limbs were soft and powerless, so I could only let myself slide to the floor. My reaction stirred up everyone present into a frenzy. They cheered and screamed as they surrounded me in the middle. I did not know who squatted down and blew smoke into my face, and a cold lighter slapped my face hard twice. We finally waited until the official auction, and after seeing you last night, you've been stuck in my head the whole time, making me wish I could have you right away. Baby, even though you just got out of prison, plenty of people are bidding on you, and I heard the price has already reached 7 figures. The sound of obscene laughter bounced off the gilded ceiling of the banquet hall. A greasy hand reached out, its stubby fingers aiming directly for my exposed shoulder. The man holding it was a notorious real estate developer from the borough, a creep known for buying up scandalous debts. 7 figures, he roared, turning back to his cronies. $1 million for the Foster family's former bodyguard. I'm going to make her wear her prison uniform in bed tonight. Ethan sat in the VIP lounge section near the front, casually swirling a glass of scotch. Beside him, Chloe giggled, burying her face in his chest. Ethan didn't even lift his eyes. He raised his hand casually, signaling to the master of ceremonies to keep the bids rolling. He thought I was completely paralyzed. He thought the drug had turned my brain to sludge, leaving me as nothing more than a limp, senseless piece of meat. He had forgotten who trained me. For 10 years before I went to prison, Grandpa Foster had subjected me to specialized tactical conditioning. Every month I was exposed to trace amounts of nerve toxins, heavy sedatives, and ether-based compounds to build up an Immunity. In prison, where corrupt guards occasionally tried to spike the water of female inmates, that immunity was the only thing that kept me alive. The wine Ethan forced down my throat had slowed my breath, but my mind was icy clear. Every touch, every word, every filthy laugh was being recorded on the micro-recorder hidden inside the seam of my undergarment, a device I had sewn in myself before stepping into this hall. Click. The heavy double doors at the back of the banquet hall suddenly exploded open. With a deafening crash, the music cut out instantly. The rowdy crowd froze mid-cheer. A squad of 20 men dressed in sharp, tactical black suits filed into the room, instantly forming two parallel lines from the entrance straight to the stage. Behind them walked an old man leaning on a heavy mahogany cane topped with a silver wolf head. It was Elder Foster, Grandpa Foster himself. His face was as hard as carved marble, his eyes dark with a lethal, ancient fury. Grandpa. Ethan stood up from his couch, his hand freezing over Chloe's waist. A flicker of panic crossed his face, but he quickly smoothed it over, stepping forward with a practiced smile. What brought you here? The wedding ceremony hasn't officially started yet. Bang! Grandpa Foster didn't utter a single word. As he reached Ethan, he swung his heavy mahogany cane with full force. The silver handle slammed directly into Ethan's chest. Ethan gasped, staggering backward and hitting the coffee table, shattering the crystal glasses into 1,000 pieces. Ethan! Chloe shrieked, cowering behind the sofa. You ungrateful, filthy dog, Grandpa Foster spoke, his voice trembling with a terrifying authority that rattled the entire hall. Is this how you run my family? Is this how you treat the savior of your worthless life? The banquet hall fell into a suffocating silence. None of the high society guests dared to breathe. Ethan clutched his bruised ribs, struggling to get back on his feet. His face turned red with a mix of pain and embarrassment. Grandpa, what are you doing? Ethan yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. On the stage. She's a convict. She spent 7 years in prison. I'm me.It. Her only because you forced me to. I'm just putting her in her place so she doesn't think she can climb over my head. Putting her in her place? Grandpa Foster scoffed, his eyes sweeping over the crowd, then landing on the scandalous wedding dress Ethan had picked for me. His gaze softened with immense grief and regret when he looked at my face. Evelyn, Grandpa called out softly. You don't need to play dead anymore. I am here. On the stage, I slowly opened my eyes. I sat up straight, my back rigid as a spear. I reached down, grabbed the low-cut neckline of the scandalously thin dress, and with a sharp RIP, tore the decorative train off, wrapping the thick satin fabric around my exposed shoulders. The crowd gasped. She wasn't drugged, the real estate developer stammered, backing away. In terror, Ethan's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Evelyn. You were pretending. I stepped down from the high platform, my bare feet hitting the cold marble floor with light, deliberate thuds. My posture was no longer that of a meek, battered prisoner. It was the stance of an elite bodyguard who had survived 7 years in the city's worst penal facility. Ethan, I said, my voice smooth, calm, and utterly devoid of warmth. You really thought a single glass of spiked wine could knock me out? Have you forgotten who taught you how to fight? Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I walked over to Grandpa Foster, bowing my head slightly. Grandpa. Child. The old man's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He reached out with a trembling hand, patting my shoulder. I was wrong. 7 years ago, I thought forcing you into prison would protect Ethan and give him time to grow into a real man. I didn't realize I was raising a venomous viper. Grandpa, what are you saying? Ethan panicked, stumbling toward the old man. I'm your grandson, your only blood heir. She's just an orphan girl we picked up off the street. An orphan girl? Grandpa turned on him, his voice booming like thunder. 7 years ago, when you stabbed that kidnapper in cold blood because of your uncontrollable temper, who took the fall for you? Who spent her youth behind bars so the Foster group wouldn't collapse overnight? The guests erupted into a frenzy of shocked whispers. What? The murder 7 years ago was committed by Ethan Foster. So Evelyn Harper took the rap for him. My God, he framed his own savior and then auctioned her off. Ethan's face went dead white. Grandpa, you're crazy. The case was closed 7 years ago. She signed the confession. She signed it because I begged her to. Grandpa Foster roared, slamming his cane onto the marble floor. She signed it because she loved you, you ungrateful beast. And I promised her that when she came out, 70% of the Foster group's equity would be transferred to her name as compensation. Chloe's head snapped up. What? 70%. Ethan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. 70%. Grandpa, you gave my family's legacy to an outsider. She is not an outsider. She is the owner of this company. Grandpa Foster pulled a thick leather-bound document from his coat pocket and tossed it directly at Ethan's face. The papers scattered across the floor. Ethan scrambled on his knees to pick them up. His eyes darted across the black and white print, his breathing growing wildly erratic. It was a binding legal trust agreement executed 7 years ago before Evelyn entered prison. It clearly stated, the 70% controlling shares of Foster enterprise held by Elder Foster shall be held in temporary stewardship by Ethan Foster. Upon Evelyn Harper's release, if Ethan Foster fails to treat her as his lawful spouse with full dignity, all shares shall automatically vest in Evelyn Harper immediately. No, no, this is impossible. Ethan shrieked, tearing at the paper. This contract isn't valid. I'm the chief executive officer. I hold the voting rights. You held them until last night. I spoke up, stepping forward. My voice was icy, cold. Last night, at 2:14 a.m., I called Grandpa and informed him of your auction scheme. The moment I stated that I refused the marriage, the penalty clause was activated. I pulled a small, sleek black silver pen from my pocket and clicked it. A clear, high-definition audio playback echoed through the venue's massive sound system. Ethan's voice. If she doesn't sell, then make her free, because if Grandpa hadn't said I could only get the company shares by marrying her, I'd think she was too filthy to even look at. Friend's voice. She upset Chloe the moment she got out, so she really does deserve a lesson. Ethan's voice. Evelyn spent 7 years in prison. She must be dying of loneliness. I'm sure she's wilder now. The explicit, disgusting conversation from 2 nights ago played out in front of every top business leader, socialite, and media mogul in the city. The guests looked at Ethan with absolute disgust. Several elderly board members of the Foster group stood up from their tables, their faces dark with fury. Unbelievable. Ethan Foster is a monster. Drugging his own fiancée, spreading private revenge porn, and abusing a woman who went to jail for him. Cancel all contracts with Foster Enterprise immediately. We can't do business with a psychopath. Ethan listened to his own voice echoing in the hall, his soul completely leaving his body. He looked up at me, his eyes full of terror. Evelyn, listen. To me, it was a joke. I was just talking trash with my friends. I didn't mean it. A joke. I stepped closer to him, looking down at his pathetic, shivering frame. Ethan, when you dragged me into the bathroom and threw steel wool at me, was that a joke? When you force-drugged honey water down my throat, was that a joke? When you put me on an auction block in front of dozens of men, was that a joke? Chloe saw that the ship was sinking and tried to quietly crawl toward the back exit. I didn't even look back. With a swift, practiced movement, I swept my leg back, kicking a heavy dining chair directly into her path. Bang! The chair crashed into Chloe's shins, sending her sprawling onto the floor with a loud scream. Where do you think you're going, Miss Bennett? I asked, turning my gaze to her. Chloe clutched her bruised leg, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Ethan. Ethan, help me. She's going to kill me. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't move. He was staring at the paper in his hand, realizing that in a single night, he had lost his fortune, his reputation, and his company. Miss Bennett. I walked over to her, stepping on the long 10-foot train of her oversized rhinestone dress, the 14-karat Oppenheimer pink diamond on. Your finger looks very familiar. Chloe instinctively pulled her hand back, covering the ring. This was a gift from Ethan. It's mine. That ring was purchased using the Foster Family Trust's reserve fund, Grandpa. Foster spoke coldly from behind me, which now belongs entirely to Evelyn. Security. 2 black-suited bodyguards stepped forward, pinning Chloe to the floor without an ounce of hesitation. One of them squeezed her wrist hard, stripping the massive pink ring from her finger and handing it directly to me. No. My ring. Give it back. Chloe wailed like a hysterical maniac. I took the pink diamond, held it up to the light, and then casually opened my hand. Clink. The multi-million-dollar ring fell straight into a crystal bucket of melting ice water on a nearby waiter's tray. It's been touched by something dirty, I said faintly. I don't want it. Chloe choked on her own tears, her face pale as a sheet. Ethan scrambled over on his hands and knees, grabbing the hem of my satin wrap, his voice cracking with utter desperation. Evelyn, I was wrong. I was blinded by Chloe. She seduced me. She told me you changed in prison. Please give me another chance. We grew up together. I loved you for 10 years. I lowered my eyes, watching the man who had once been my entire world. 7 years ago, when he knelt before me crying, I felt my heart break for him. Today, watching him beg on his knees, I felt nothing but utter disgust. Ethan, I reached down, slowly prying his fingers off my clothes one by one. You didn't lose me because of Chloe. You lost me because you are a coward, a sadist and a thief. Grandpa. Ethan turned to the old man, weeping hysterically. You can't give her the company. I'm your grandson. I have the Foster blood. If she takes over, the Foster name is finished. Grandpa Foster looked at him with icy disdain. The Foster name was finished the moment you turned into a degenerate. You think taking away your shares is the end of it. Grandpa raised his hand and gestured toward the entrance. Two men in dark gray suits stepped into the hall, flashing gold badges. Ethan Foster? The lead detective spoke calmly, his voice echoing over the quiet room. We are from the state prosecutor's office. We have received new forensic evidence regarding the abandoned factory homicide from 7 years ago, as well as multiple complaints regarding human trafficking, illegal administration of controlled substances, and corporate tax evasion. Ethan's eyes widened in sheer horror. What evidence? I stepped forward and pulled a small silver USB drive from the lining of my wrap. 7 years ago, before I signed the confession, I kept the bloody shirt you wore that night, along with the knife handle containing your full palm print. I said, my voice cutting through his soul like a razor. I hid it in a deposit box at the city central bank. I swore I would take that secret to my grave if you kept your promise. I leaned down, looking straight into his bloodshot eyes. But you broke your promise, Ethan. So now you can go serve those 7 years yourself. No, Evelyn. You can't do this to me. Ethan screamed like a slaughtered animal as the detective stepped forward and snapped heavy steel handcuffs around his wrists. Chloe tried to sneak away again, but the second detective placed a hand on her shoulder. Chloe Bennett, you are also under arrest as an accomplice to illegal drugging, extortion, and receiving stolen property. I didn't do anything. It was all Ethan. Ethan forced me. Chloe shrieked, kicking and flailing as she was dragged out alongside Ethan. The guests stood in stunned silence as the former golden boy of New York High Society was paraded out of his own wedding venue in handcuffs, weeping and screaming my name like a lunatic. The auction banquet hall cleared out within an hour. The media exploded. Headlines across the nation read, Foster Group Scandal, Heir, Arrested for Framing Savior, Evelyn Harper Reclaims Controlling Interest. 3 weeks later, I stood in the corner office on the top floor of the Foster Enterprise building. The heavy velvet curtains had been pulled back, letting the bright afternoon sunlight flood the room. I wore a tailored dark navy suit, my hair pinned back sharply. Gone was the timid, bruised girl who had walked out of the prison gates 3 weeks ago. There was a soft knock on the door. Grandpa Foster walked in, leaning on his cane. He looked older, his hair completely white, but there was a sense of profound peace in his eyes. The board meeting just concluded, Grandpa said gently, sitting down on the leather sofa. Every single director voted to appoint you as the sole chairwoman and CEO. The company's stock has already recovered by 15% since Ethan's arrest was announced. Thank you, Grandpa, I said, walking over to pour him a cup of warm tea. Don't thank me, child, the old man sighed, taking the cup with trembling hands. I gave you 7 years of hell. This company, these assets, they are just material things. They can never buy back your youth. They don't need to buy back my youth, I replied softly, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city skyline. The past 7 years taught me how to survive in the dark. Now I own the light. Ethan's lawyer called this morning, Grandpa mentioned cautiously, looking up at me. He's begging for a plea bargain. He says he wants to see you one last time before he gets sentenced. I paused, sipping my tea. Where is he? At the city detention center. I picked up my blazer from the desk. Then let's go. I have a final gift for you. The visitor room at the city detention center was cold, smelling of stale disinfectant. When Ethan was led in by 2 guards, I almost didn't recognize him. In just 3 weeks, he had lost noticeable weight. His hair was shaved short. His designer clothes replaced by an orange prison jumpsuit. His face was covered in dark bruises. Clearly, his fellow inmates hadn't treated the former spoiled billionaire kindly. When he saw me sitting behind the thick glass partition, his eyes lit up with a wild, pathetic hope. He grabbed the plastic telephone receiver with shaking hands. I picked up my receiver. Evelyn, you came? Ethan wept into the phone, his face pressed against the glass. I knew you still loved me. I knew you wouldn't leave me here. Please tell the prosecutor you made a mistake. Tell them the knife was yours. You did it once, you can do it again. I'll give you all the money. I'll be your dog. Just get me out of here. I listened to his hysterical begging, my expression placid and unbothered. Ethan, I spoke softly through the receiver. Do you remember what you told your friends in that group chat? Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. You said I spent 7 years in prison, so I must be dying of loneliness. I continued, my voice smooth and chillingly calm. You said I was dirty. You said I was cheap. No. I was crazy. I was drunk. Chloe tricked me. Ethan slammed his head against the glass, tears and snot smearing the surface. Evelyn, I love you. I've always loved you. Remember when we were 18? Remember when I swore I'd give you a home? I remember. I smiled faintly. I remembered it every single day for 7 years while I was sleeping on a cold concrete floor. I reached into my bag, pulled out a document, and pressed it against the glass for him to see. It was an official corporate resolution passed by the board of directors. Starting today, the Foster Enterprise name is legally dissolved. I told him. The company has been renamed Harper Global. Every asset, every property, every bank account under your name has been liquidated to pay for the corporate fraud, fines and my civil compensation. Ethan stared at the document, his body shaking violently. No. You erased my family name. And one more thing. I pulled out a small photograph and pressed it against the glass. It was a picture of Chloe in the female holding facility, her face bruised, wearing the same orange jumpsuit. Chloe entered a guilty plea this morning, I said coldly. To reduce her sentence, she turned over all the video files, texts, and financial records, proving you personally ordered her to drug me and record those videos. She gave the prosecution everything. Ethan's eyes widened to the size of saucers. That bitch. You two really were made for each other. I chuckled softly, putting the phone back onto its cradle. I stood up, buttoning my navy blazer, and turned to walk out. Evelyn. Don't leave me. Evelyn. I'm sorry. Evelyn. Ethan screamed through the thick glass, banging his fists against the pane until his knuckles bled, his desperate wails echoing through the cold, concrete hallway. I didn't turn back. Not once. 6 months later. The morning air at the city's Central Park was crisp and clear. I walked along the paved stone path, wearing a comfortable cashmere sweater and jeans, holding a cup of hot black coffee. Beside me, Grandpa Foster walked, slowly breathing in the fresh air. The foundation opened its 3rd rescue center for wrongfully convicted women yesterday. Grandpa mentioned with a proud smile. You've done more good in 6 months than the Foster family did in 50 years. It's just the beginning, Grandpa, I replied, looking up at the clear blue sky. My phone chimed in my pocket. It was a text from my lead legal counsel. Ethan Foster sentenced to 15 years. Without parole. Chloe Bennett sentenced to 6 years. I glanced at the screen, smiled faintly, and turned the phone off. 15 years. He would spend the best years of his life behind the exact same high concrete walls, eating the exact same cold food, sleeping on the exact same hard floor that he had forced me to endure. Evelyn, Grandpa asked gently, stopping by a wooden bench overlooking the lake. Are you happy now? I stopped, taking a deep breath of the fresh, sweet air. For 7 years, I thought my life was defined by pain, sacrifice, and the love of a man who didn't deserve it. I thought I was doomed to be a shadow living in someone else's golden world. Now, standing under the bright morning sun, with my own name on the building, my own fortune in my hands, and absolute freedom in my heart, I knew the truth. The trial was over. The debt was paid. Yes, Grandpa. I turned to him, my eyes shining with absolute clarity and warmth. I'm finally free.